You're wrong. The quiet correction moved through the boardroom like a blade across glass. 24 executives stopped breathing. A fountain pen froze above a legal pad. Someone's coffee cup remained suspended halfway to his mouth. At the head of the polished black table, Nico Belante slowly lifted his eyes. He had been speaking for 11 minutes without interruption, outlining Belante Holdings' $900 million acquisition of Meridian Freight, the largest private shipping network left on the East Coast. The deal would give his company control of 6 major distribution corridors and enough legitimate revenue to loosen the Belante family's dependence on darker businesses that had fed it for generations. No one in the room knew all of that. They only knew Nico Belante did not make mistakes. Competitors called him ruthless. Bankers called him disciplined. Federal investigators called him untouchable when they thought no one from his organization was listening. Inside Belante Holdings, one rule stood above every written policy. Never tell Nico Belante he was wrong. The woman seated halfway down the table had apparently missed that lesson. Audrey Hale adjusted the thin black frames on her nose and glanced toward the acquisition model displayed across the screen. She had joined the company 9 days earlier as a forensic accountant. She was 32, curvy, composed, and dressed in a navy blazer chosen for comfort rather than attention. Her dark auburn hair was pinned back, though several loose strands had escaped near her cheeks. Nothing about her posture suggested rebellion. If anything, she looked mildly apologetic. That somehow made the interruption worse. Nico folded his hands. Say that again. Audrey met his gaze. The acquisition model is wrong. A senior vice president closed his eyes. The chief legal officer stared at Audrey, as if calculating how quickly security could remove her. Marcus Belante, Nico's older cousin and chief operating officer, leaned back with open disbelief. Nico ignored them. What part? The depreciation benefit. Audrey stood, walked toward the screen, and held out one hand for the wireless controller. No one moved. The presentation director looked at Nico. Nico looked at Audrey. She waited. After a long second, Nico placed the controller in her palm. Her fingers brushed his. Warm. Steady. Audrey turned toward the screen. Meridian Freight owns 2 subsidiaries that share the same maintenance fleet. The model assigns the depreciation benefit to both entities, as if they own separate equipment. She clicked once. 2 columns enlarged. Here and here. Audrey opened the supporting schedule, deleted one duplicated line, corrected the timing on an equipment write-down, and recalculated the projected cost. $900 million became $882 million. $18 million vanished from the purchase price. A murmur moved through the room. One executive opened his calculator. Another pulled up the spreadsheet on his laptop. The chief financial officer leaned forward so sharply his chair creaked. Nico studied the revised total. You're certain? Audrey looked at him over her shoulder. I would not have interrupted you if I were uncertain. Marcus gave a short laugh. The model was reviewed by 3 departments. Then 3 departments reviewed the same mistake. A few eyes dropped toward the table. Something changed in Nico's expression. Not amusement. Interest. Continue. The words startled the room more than anger would have. Audrey returned to the model. The duplicated depreciation is not the only issue. The original version of this schedule was correct. The chief financial officer frowned. That's impossible. It was correct, 48 hours ago. Audrey opened the document history. The formula was manually changed after final approval. This time, no one moved. Nico's gaze sharpened. By whom? The system does not show a username. It shows an executive authorization code. Marcus leaned forward. Which code? I have not verified ownership yet. Then perhaps, Marcus said, you should avoid implying deliberate manipulation. Audrey looked at him calmly. I am not implying it. She clicked again. A timestamp appeared beside the altered formula. I am stating that the change was deliberate. Whoever made it removed the user identification but left the approval sequence intact. They understood the reporting system well enough to hide their name, but not well enough to erase the transaction path. The boardroom seemed colder. Nico Rose. He did not raise his voice. He never needed to. Everyone out. Chairs moved immediately. Laptops snapped shut. No one asked whether the meeting was finished. Within a minute, 23 executives had filed through the glass doors. Marcus remained. Nico looked at him once. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then he followed the others. Audrey stayed beside the screen, still holding the controller. The doors closed, leaving her alone with the most feared man in the city. Nico walked toward the altered figures. Do you know who changed them? Not yet. Why? Not yet. You seem comfortable saying that. I am comfortable distinguishing facts from guesses. And what is the fact? Someone inside your company tried to inflate the purchase price by $18 million. Nico's face revealed nothing. Audrey continued. More importantly, they expected no one to challenge the number. That is an assumption. No. She held his gaze. It is the only reason this works. The fraud depends on everyone in this building believing you cannot be wrong. For the first time, silence affected Nico more than the people around him. His reputation had protected his empire for years. Now this woman was telling him it had created the perfect place to rob it. How long would it take you to find the person responsible? If I receive unrestricted access? Yes. 30 days. Nico considered her answer, then closed the blue folder beside his chair and pushed it toward her. From this moment forward, Audrey Hale, you report directly to me. By 9 o'clock the next morning, Audrey Hale had been given a temporary office on the executive floor, a security badge with unrestricted clearance, and a contract amendment written in language so aggressive it appeared to have been drafted during a hostage negotiation. She read every page before signing. Nico watched from behind his desk while she reviewed the final clause for the third time. You do realize most employees sign those without reading them, he said. Audrey looked up. That explains several of your current problems. Nico's mouth shifted slightly, though the expression disappeared before it became a smile. The amendment appointed her independent forensic investigator for the Meridian Freight acquisition. For the next 30 days, she would report directly to Nico and hold authority to review all corporate subsidiaries, vendor contracts, executive approvals, banking records, and internal authorization logs. No department head could deny her access. No executive could alter a file under review. Any attempt to interfere with the investigation would be reported directly to the board. It was more power than Audrey had expected. It was also incomplete. She placed the contract on Nico's desk. This excludes family-controlled accounts. Those accounts are outside the acquisition. Then confirming that should be easy. Nico leaned back. Certain divisions operate under different security protocols. Different because they are private or different because they are illegal? The question would have ended most conversations in the building. Nico simply studied her. You ask dangerous questions. I was hired to find dangerous answers. The private accounts remain restricted. Audrey picked up her pen but did not sign. Then I cannot certify the audit. You have access to every legitimate division of Belante Holdings. Money does not respect organizational charts, Mr. Belante. If someone moved $18 million, they did not stop at the edge of a department because the policy manual told them to. For several seconds, neither moved. Nico was accustomed to silence becoming pressure. Audrey treated it like empty space. Finally, he pulled the contract toward him, crossed out the exclusion, initialed the change, and pushed it back. You will inform me before opening any protected account. I will inform you immediately after I find something relevant. His eyes narrowed. Audrey signed. By 10:30, the finance department understood that their new investigator had returned with the authority to inspect anything she wanted. The news traveled faster than the official announcement. Conversations stopped when Audrey entered the accounting floor. Managers suddenly discovered urgent reasons to reorganize their desks. One junior analyst minimized a shopping website with such panic that he nearly knocked over his monitor. Audrey ignored all of it. She placed 3 empty archive boxes beside the conference table and addressed the department. I need every supporting schedule connected to Meridian Freight, including earlier drafts. I also need vendor master files, user access histories, payment approvals, and changes made within the last 60 days. A finance manager raised his hand as though he were back in school. How soon? Before lunch. His face fell. That is 3 years of documentation. Then I suggest starting with the last 60 days. By noon, blue folders covered the conference table. By 1, Audrey had returned 4 of them. 1 lacked original invoices. Another contained approval signatures without dates. A third relied on projected revenue described as highly probable, though no supporting contracts existed. She attached a note to each file in precise handwriting. Incomplete. Unsupported. Recalculate. At 2:15, Owen Price, a senior internal auditor with rolled sleeves and a permanently tired expression, appeared at the conference room door carrying 2 coffees. I was told, caffeine improves survival rates. Audrey accepted one. Who told you I was in danger? No one. They said we were. He nodded toward the rejected folders. You return the hospitality forecast to a vice president who has not heard the word no since 2019. His forecast assumes 98% occupancy for 12 consecutive months. He is optimistic. He is fictional. Owen laughed before quickly checking whether anyone important had heard him. Audrey spent the afternoon mapping changes made to the acquisition model. The altered depreciation line had passed through 3 internal systems, but the authorization trail vanished behind an executive-level code. She requested a complete directory of those codes. The technology department sent her a partial list. She returned it within 6 minutes. At 4, the complete list arrived. At 5 to 10, Nico appeared in the doorway of the conference room. He carried no entourage. The effect on the department was immediate. Keyboards became louder. Conversations disappeared. Owen lowered his coffee and whispered, "This is usually where people reconsider their career choices." Audrey did not look away from her screen. "Mr. Belante, your technology department initially withheld records. They were corrected after I threatened to include their refusal in the board report. An efficient method." He entered the room and surveyed the folders. "What have you found?" "Your company confuses approval with verification." "Explain." Audrey opened 3 reports. Department heads signed documents because their managers prepared them. Managers approve numbers because analysts entered them. Analysts assume someone above them will check the final result. She turned another page. Everyone trusts the next person in the chain. No one checks the first person. Nico glanced toward the employees outside the glass wall. "You think they are careless?" "No. I think they are human." She slid one file toward him. "People rarely make mistakes because they are incapable. They make mistakes because everyone assumes someone else checked first." Nico opened the report. His signature appeared on the final page. Audrey pointed to the missing attachments. "You approved this acquisition summary without 3 supporting schedules. I trusted the executive who prepared it. He may be competent." She placed a second folder on top of the first. "He is also human." Nico's expression cooled. "I have managed this company for 15 years, and you have probably been busy for all 15. Audrey took a yellow sticky note from the table, wrote 4 words, and placed it over his signature. "Read before you sign." Owen coughed into his hand and turned away. Nico stared at the note. "You are assigning me homework. I am preventing expensive mistakes. Do you speak to every chief executive this way?" "Only the ones who skip the appendices." This time, Nico did smile. It was brief, controlled, and startling enough that 2 accountants outside the room looked at each other. He closed the folder. "Anything else?" Audrey opened the vendor database. North Star Advisory received 12 payments across 3 subsidiaries during the last 4 months. What services did they provide? According to the invoices, strategic consulting. According to you, they have no employees, no active website, and an office address that belongs to a rented mailbox in Delaware. Nico's smile vanished. Audrey enlarged the final approval screen. "Every payment carries an executive authorization code." "Whose?" She looked at the code, then at him. "Marcus Belante's." Nico's face became unreadable. Marcus was not simply an executive. He was family, raised beside Nico, trusted with operations no outsider was allowed to see. Audrey noticed the change but did not understand it yet. "Should I suspend the vendor?" she asked. Nico remained silent for a moment too long. Then he closed the laptop halfway. "No. Why not?" "Because if someone is watching the account, I do not want them to know we found it." Audrey studied him. "You already suspected something." "I suspected many things." "Did you suspect your cousin?" Nico's gaze hardened. "Keep looking, Miss Hale." That was not an answer. He turned toward the door. "It is the only one you are getting today." Audrey watched him leave, then looked again at the North Star payments. For the first time since entering Belante Holdings, the numbers felt less like a mistake and more like a warning. By the beginning of Audrey's 3rd week at Belante Holdings, the executive meetings had developed a new rhythm. Nico presented a plan. Audrey found the flaw. The room held its breath. Then one of them proved the other wrong. Most often, it was Audrey. The latest disagreement began during a strategy meeting about 3 new distribution centers Nico intended to open before the end of the year. His proposal was aggressive, expensive, and presented with enough confidence that nearly every executive around the table had already begun nodding before he reached the final slide. Audrey waited until he finished. "The timeline will fail." A few department heads looked down at their notes. Owen Price, seated near the back as part of the audit team, quietly checked his watch. Nico rested one hand on the conference table. "You have not reviewed the construction contracts. I reviewed them last night. The contractors guaranteed completion within 8 months. They guaranteed completion under ideal conditions." Audrey connected her laptop to the screen. The first chart showed projected rainfall across the 3 proposed locations. The second showed a regional shortage of skilled construction workers. The third tracked fuel prices over the previous 5 years. The schedule assumes perfect weather, no permit delays, full labor availability, and stable transportation costs, she said. You may get one of those. You will not get all 4. The sites were selected for efficiency. The sites are excellent. Then the plan is sound. The plan is profitable. The deadline is fiction. Someone at the far end of the table lowered his head to hide a smile. Nico looked toward the projected timeline. How much delay? 6 months. That is excessive. It is conservative. What happens if we increase the contractor incentive? You will spend more money to discover that Rain does not accept bonuses. Owen covered a cough. Nico asked 3 more questions. Audrey answered each one without raising her voice. By the time she finished, the revised 18-month schedule was displayed beside Nico's original projection. The chief operating officer cleared his throat. The revised schedule reduces the risk of penalties. Marcus Belante's tone remained neutral, but Audrey noticed that he did not look at her when he spoke. Nico studied the screen for several seconds. Use Hale's timeline. The meeting ended 12 minutes early. As Audrey gathered her papers, Owen appeared beside her with an expression of solemn disappointment. What? I had 9 minutes. She frowned. For what? He glanced toward the door to make sure Nico had left. How long it would take you to correct him? Audrey slowly lowered the folder in her hands. People are timing us? Not officially. That does not make it better. No money changes hands. She stared at him. Coffee, Owen admitted. The winner gets coffee. How long has this been happening? Since the second budgeting meeting. Audrey looked around the conference room. Several executives immediately became interested in their phones. This is a workplace, she said. Yes. Not a sporting event. Also yes. She walked out before Owen could see the color rising in her face. The story spread through the building within an hour. Not that Audrey had defeated Nico again. That happened often enough to be ordinary now. The remarkable part was that she had finally discovered the coffee pool. Nico heard about it from his assistant. He should have stopped it. Instead, he asked who had won. After that morning, his visits to the accounting department became more frequent. At first, he carried legitimate questions. He wanted clarification on a vendor classification, a revised compliance report, or the cost assumptions behind a shipping contract. Then the reasons became less convincing. One Tuesday, he arrived with a 5-page report already marked approved. Audrey looked up from her monitor. You came down 4 floors for this? I was nearby. Your office is in the opposite direction. I was inspecting the building. She glanced toward the rows of desks. The accounting department? The entire building. Convenient. What is? That every inspection ends beside my desk. Several keyboards became suspiciously quiet. Nico placed the report in front of her. Confirm the expense classifications. Audrey reviewed the pages. They are correct. I know. Then why bring them? I wanted independent confirmation. Confirmed. She returned the report. Nico remained standing. Audrey resumed working. After nearly 15 seconds, she looked up again. Was there something else? No. Then why are you still here? His gaze moved across the department as though the answer might be hidden near the filing cabinets. I appreciate efficient operations. You have appreciated this department every day this week. One of the junior accountants suddenly dropped a pen. Nico ignored the sound. Perhaps the others should become more efficient. Perhaps you should return to your office. A faint warmth entered his eyes. Is that a professional recommendation? It is preventive maintenance. He left with the report. The moment the elevator doors closed, Owen rolled his chair toward Audrey's desk. He likes you. He likes accurate reports. He has accurate reports upstairs. He prefers paper. He came down without paper yesterday. Audrey opened another spreadsheet. He was inspecting the building. Owen stared at her, then rolled slowly back to his desk. Later that afternoon, Audrey attended an investor lunch at Ashford National Bank. The dining room overlooked the river and had the polished silence of a place where even the silverware seemed expensive. Nico sat at the head of the table beside Celeste Ashford, the bank chairman's daughter. Celeste was elegant in a way that appeared effortless and had probably required years of practice. Her pale suit fit perfectly. Her blonde hair rested in a smooth wave over one shoulder. She greeted Audrey with a pleasant smile that never quite reached her eyes. You must be the new accountant. Forensic investigator. Audrey corrected gently. Of course. Celeste's gaze passed over Audrey's cream blouse and full figure before returning to her face. It is wonderful that Nico values people with specialized talents. Large organizations need so many capable individuals behind the scenes. The insult was delicate enough to deny. Audrey had heard variations of it before. Women like Celeste rarely said that she was too curvy, too ordinary, or too visibly comfortable to belong among polished executives. They simply praised her usefulness while making certain she understood the limits of her place. Audrey smiled. The advantage of working behind the scenes is seeing what people miss in front of them. Celeste's expression tightened by a fraction. Across the table, Nico watched Audrey become quieter for the rest of lunch. He said nothing until they returned to Belante Holdings. Inside the elevator, he asked, "Why did you let that pass?" Audrey knew exactly what he meant. It was not worth correcting. She intended to diminish you. Numbers are worth correcting. Some people are only worth understanding. The elevator doors opened. Audrey stepped out, but Nico followed. "You belong in every room your work affects." She turned toward him. The statement carried no flirtation, no pity, only certainty. For one dangerous second, Audrey forgot how to answer. Then she remembered the investigation. "I found another transfer." Nico's expression changed immediately. Back at her desk, Audrey opened the North Star payment records. 12 transfers had moved through 3 subsidiaries before reaching Ashford National Bank. The amounts varied, but every transaction followed the same route. She highlighted the authorization times. 3 of these were approved while you were at the Belante Foundation dinner last month, she said. 1 was processed while you were speaking on stage in front of 600 people. Nico leaned closer to the screen. "Your authorization code was used," Audrey continued. "But you could not have entered it. Someone copied my credentials, or someone had access to a system designed to make it look that way." She opened the final transaction path. The money passed through North Star, disappeared into an Ashford clearing account, and emerged under a different vendor name. Nico's face hardened. Audrey looked at him. "Either someone stole your identity inside your own company, or you approved $18 million without remembering it. I remember every dollar I authorize. Then someone inside your organization wants the world to believe you do not." Audrey stayed at Belante Holdings long after the accounting floor had gone dark. By 11:30, the only sounds left were the low hum of the ventilation system and the soft tapping of her keyboard. North Star Advisory's payment history covered 3 subsidiaries, 4 banks, and dozens of invoices written in language vague enough to hide almost anything. She had built a timeline across 2 monitors, marking every transfer, approval code, and delay between authorization and execution. The pattern was there. She could feel it. Someone had created a system that looked random from a distance but moved with deliberate precision when viewed as a whole. "You know the building has a closing time." Nico's voice came from the doorway. Audrey did not look up. "Apparently it does not apply to either of us." He entered carrying a paper bag and 2 bottles of water. His jacket was gone, his tie loosened, and the sleeves of his white shirt were folded once at the wrists. Without the armor of his usual suit, he looked less like the untouchable head of an empire, and more like a man who had forgotten what rest felt like. He placed the bag beside her keyboard. "Eat." Audrey glanced inside. Turkey sandwiches, fruit, and 2 containers of soup. "Is this an order?" "A recommendation. You are improving. An exhausted accountant makes mistakes." She looked at the untouched food in his hand. "So does an exhausted mafia boss." Nico's eyes narrowed slightly. "That title is not used in this building." "Then your employees have remarkably creative imaginations." She took 1 sandwich and pushed the other toward him. "Sit." Most people did not tell Nico Belante to sit. Audrey had already returned to her screen before remembering that fact. To her surprise, he pulled out the chair beside her. They ate in silence for several minutes. The quiet was different from the silence inside executive meetings. There was no pressure in it, no invisible struggle for control. Nico studied the columns on her screen. "How long have you been doing this kind of work? Forensic accounting? Finding things powerful people want hidden?" Audrey set down her sandwich. "Long enough to know they usually hide behind respectable language. Consulting fees, strategic reserves, administrative adjustments, temporary transfers." She gave him a dry look. "Criminals become very polite when they learn accounting." Nico almost smiled. "Is that what happened at your previous firm?" Audrey's hand paused over the keyboard. She had never told him about that. "You investigated me. I hired you. Those are not the same thing." "In my world, they are." She leaned back. "A senior partner was stealing from client accounts. I found the pattern and reported it to the board." "What happened?" "They accused me of accessing restricted records without permission." Nico's expression changed. "Did you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he denied me access after I questioned the transfers." "And the board believed him?" "They believed the person whose name was on the building." Her voice remained even. but Nico heard the old wound beneath it. The firm settled quietly. He retired for health reasons. I became the difficult employee who could not be trusted with boundaries. You were right. That did not protect me. Nico looked toward the dark windows. No, it rarely does. Audrey studied him. You sound familiar with the problem. For a moment, he appeared ready to dismiss the question. Then he removed his watch and placed it on the table. An oddly intimate gesture from a man who seemed to measure every second. My father trusted a business partner more than he trusted his own instincts. The man gave information to a rival family. My father died because of it. Audrey did not ask how. The answer lived in the stillness of Nico's face. So you stopped trusting people. I learned to verify loyalty. Through fear? Fear is reliable. No, fear is quiet. Nico turned toward her. Audrey continued before caution could stop her. People who fear you will obey while you are watching. They will also hide every mistake, every doubt, and every warning that might make you angry. That is not loyalty. It is silence. You seem unusually comfortable criticizing the way I lead. You hired me because no one else would. He looked at her for several seconds. You are the first person in years to enter my office without asking permission. You never told me I needed it. Everyone else understood. Audrey tilted her head. Maybe that is your problem. This time Nico laughed. It was quiet and brief, but genuine. The sound changed his entire face. Audrey felt an unexpected warmth rise beneath her ribs and immediately returned her attention to the screen. I found a delay in the transactions, she said. 23 minutes between internal approval and bank execution. It happens every time North Star receives money. Nico leaned closer. His shoulder nearly touched hers. What does that mean? I do not know yet. You dislike saying that. I dislike not knowing. He looked at her rather than the records. That may be the first thing we agree on. They worked until after 1. Nico reviewed vendor names while Audrey compared banking timestamps. When they finally left, the parking garage was nearly empty. Audrey walked toward her car, searching for her keys. Nico stopped several feet behind her. Do not touch it. She followed his gaze. The rear tire had been slashed. Beneath the windshield wiper rested a folded sheet of cream-colored paper. Nico moved in front of her before removing it with a handkerchief. The message contained one sentence. Some numbers should remain buried. Audrey read it over his shoulder. Her pulse quickened, but her voice remained controlled. That narrows the list. Nico turned. This is not a joke. I know. You will have security from now on. No, that was not a request. Audrey met his eyes. Then, this may be the first argument you actually win. Nico called his security chief. While he spoke, Audrey examined the note without touching it. The paper was thick, cream-colored, with a faint embossed line near the edge. She had seen it earlier that week beneath confidential reports in Marcus Belante's office. Nico. He ended the call. What? Audrey pointed to the paper. That stationery is not sold anywhere in the building. His face hardened. How do you know? Because it is reserved for the private executive floor. She looked toward the dark tower above them. Whoever left this did not come from outside your company. The Belante Foundation Gala occupied the top 2 floors of the Halston Grand, a hotel built to make wealthy people feel even more important than they already believed themselves to be. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble. A string quartet played near the ballroom entrance. Bankers, judges, investors, and political donors moved through the room beneath the soft gold light, smiling with the careful warmth of people who remembered every favor and forgot nothing. Audrey had almost refused to attend. She had spent the previous 48 hours reviewing security logs, executive stationery orders, and access records connected to the note left on her car. Nothing had identified the person who placed it there. Nico had doubled security around her anyway. A driver now waited outside her apartment. 2 guards occupied desks near accounting. She disliked the attention, but after finding a second anonymous warning inside a file drawer, she had stopped arguing. For one evening, Nico insisted she leave the investigation behind. Audrey entered the ballroom wearing a dark green gown with a simple neckline and long, elegant sleeves. The fabric followed her curves without hiding them or apologizing for them. Her auburn hair fell loosely over one shoulder, and the only jewelry she wore was a pair of small gold earrings inherited from her mother. She felt exposed, not because of the dress, but because rooms like this had always seemed designed to measure people before they spoke. Across the ballroom, Nico stopped listening to the banker beside him. Audrey noticed the silence before she found him. He stood near the head table in a black tuxedo, one hand resting beside an untouched glass of whiskey. His expression remained controlled, but something in his gaze changed when it reached her. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Celeste Ashford stepped between them. "Audrey," she said warmly. "You look lovely." "Thank you. I am glad Nico convinced you to attend. People in your position often avoid these events." Audrey smiled. "What position is that?" Celeste's expression remained flawless. "A highly specialized one. You spend so much time with reports and compliance files. Formal society can be exhausting when one is accustomed to working behind the scenes." Audrey had heard the message beneath the compliment. "You are useful here, but you do not belong here." Before she could answer, Nico approached. "Celeste." "Nico." Her smile brightened. "I was telling Audrey how valuable her work has been." "I heard." There was no accusation in his tone, but Celeste's posture became more careful. Audrey touched Nico's sleeve lightly. "It is fine." His eyes shifted toward her. "Is it? Not every comment deserves an audit. Some deserve correction. Tonight, I would prefer dinner." A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Then dinner it is." He offered his arm. Audrey hesitated only briefly before accepting it. The contact was formal, but she felt the warmth of him through the fabric. Conversation softened as they crossed the ballroom. Audrey became aware of the attention following them, especially from the society reporters near the stage. "You understand this will create rumors," she murmured. "There were already rumors. About us? Apparently I spend too much time in accounting." "You do." Nico looked down at her. "Then perhaps the rumors are based on evidence." Before Audrey could answer, the foundation director called the room to order. Dinner passed through speeches, applause, and presentations celebrating Belante-funded hospitals, scholarship programs, and neighborhood redevelopment projects. Audrey listened with growing surprise. She knew Belante Holdings employed thousands of people, but she had not understood how many families depended on its charitable work. Near the end of the evening, Celeste took the stage on behalf of Ashford National Bank. She thanked the legal team, the operations division, the investment group, and the executives who had made the foundation's expansion possible. Each name received warm applause. Then Celeste looked toward Audrey. "We should also recognize those whose talents are most effective away from the spotlight," she said. "Every successful organization needs capable people who understand calculations, even if leadership requires qualities that cannot be measured on a spreadsheet." The insult arrived wrapped in elegance. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Audrey felt dozens of eyes turned toward her. She could have answered. She could have listed the millions she had saved, or explained how many of Celeste's polished projects survived only because someone verified the numbers behind them. Instead, she lifted her water glass and offered a small, calm nod. Silence made Celeste's smile look crueler than any reply could have. The applause that followed was brief. Nico rose before Celeste had fully left the stage. "Before we conclude," he said, taking the microphone, "I would like to correct an omission." Audrey's stomach tightened. Nico signaled the audiovisual technician. The screen behind him illuminated with the Meridian acquisition model. The first slide displayed the duplicated depreciation error. Financial exposure prevented. $18 million. Audrey Hale. A second slide appeared. Undisclosed vendor risk identified. Audrey Hale. Then another. Unsupported operating forecast corrected. Audrey Hale. The presentation continued through every major decision Audrey had influenced since joining the company. Nico looked across the ballroom. Leadership is often mistaken for visibility. We praise the person at the microphone and forget the person who prevented the disaster before anyone knew it existed. His gaze settled on Audrey. "Miss Hale has done more than correct our reports. She has reminded this company that power becomes dangerous when no one is willing to challenge it." The room was completely silent. Every successful decision shown tonight was strengthened because she cared more about the truth than anyone's pride, including mine. The applause began at the legal table. Then operations stood. Finance followed. Within seconds, nearly the entire ballroom had risen. Audrey remained still. Owen, seated behind her, leaned forward and whispered, "They found the right person." Nico stepped down from the stage and stopped beside his chair at the head table. He pulled it back. Audrey shook her head. "Absolutely not. It is a chair. It is your chair." "No." His voice lowered so only she could hear. "Tonight, it is respect." The applause continued until Audrey finally sat. Later, after the formal program ended, Nico found her near the edge of the dance floor. "You embarrassed me," she said. "I honored you. In front of half the city. They were overdue." He held out his hand. "Dance with me." Audrey should have refused. Instead, she placed her hand in his. They moved slowly beneath the chandeliers. Nico's hand rested carefully at her waist. The room faded until Audrey could hear only the music and the quiet rhythm of his breathing. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that his interest might extend beyond her usefulness. Nico looked ready to say something. Then Marcus appeared beside them. His face was calm, but his voice was urgent. Federal regulators have requested every document connected to North Star Advisory. Nico's hand tightened slightly around Audrey's. Marcus continued. The request names you personally. Across the ballroom, Celeste stood near the doors, speaking quietly with her father. Audrey watched Marcus glance toward them. The victory of the evening suddenly felt temporary. By 8 the next morning, the gala felt like something that had happened to someone else. Audrey sat inside the executive conference room with 3 laptops open, the North Star records spread across the table, and a federal document request glowing on the center screen. The regulators wanted transaction logs, executive approvals, vendor contracts, and all correspondence connected to the missing $18 million. Every request named Nico Belante as the responsible officer. Nico stood near the windows, jacket removed, expression unreadable. Marcus occupied the opposite end of the table. We should provide only what is legally required. Audrey continued typing. That is usually what people say before investigators discover what they tried to hide. Marcus looked at her. You are not legal counsel. No. I am the person who found the problem your legal counsel missed. Nico turned from the window. What do the records show? Audrey connected her laptop to the screen. Every suspicious transfer carries your digital signature. Not an imitation. A valid encrypted authorization. I did not approve them. I believe you. Marcus's gaze sharpened. Audrey opened another file, but the system was designed to make belief irrelevant. If these records reach federal investigators in their current form, they will conclude that Nico personally authorized payments to North Star Advisory. She displayed a map of the transfers. The money moved through Belante subsidiaries, entered Ashford National Bank, and reappeared through private security vendors. These companies purchased equipment, vehicles, and payroll services for men who do not appear in Belante Holdings' employment records. Nico's face hardened. How many? At least 40. Marcus leaned forward. That could be routine subcontracting. It could, Audrey said, if the contractors existed. Silence settled across the room. She enlarged the authorization sequence. Each payment required 2 approvals. Nico's digital signature appears first. Marcus's operating code appears second. Marcus's voice cooled. My office approves hundreds of payments. Your office also processes every North Star transfer, exactly 23 minutes after Nico's authorization appears. That proves procedure. It proves a pattern. Nico stepped closer to the screen. Can you prove who created the first authorization? Not yet. Marcus exhaled impatiently. Then we are accusing family based on timing. Audrey turned toward him. I have not accused anyone. You keep saying that while displaying my name. Your name displayed itself. Nico's gaze moved between them. Audrey, open the protected accounts. Marcus stood. Those records have nothing to do with the acquisition. They may now, Nico said. Audrey entered the private system. Several folders required biometric approval. Nico placed his thumb against the scanner, without hesitation. The records opened. Within minutes, Audrey found a second network of payments connected to the same security vendors. The amounts were smaller, but the frequency had increased during the previous 6 months. She traced one authorization path, then another. Her stomach tightened. Nico. What? These accounts are financing operations outside your corporate structure. I can see that. No. She opened the final audit trail. They are financing operations outside your command. Marcus's chair moved sharply against the floor. Audrey looked at him, then back at Nico. Someone is building a private force using Belante money. Nico's expression became colder than she had ever seen it. Give me everything connected to those accounts. Audrey hesitated. There is more. She displayed a series of cloned approval certificates. Each one carried Nico's signature, but the encryption source came from a mirrored server registered through Ashford National Bank. Marcus moved toward the screen. That is impossible. Audrey studied his reaction. It came too quickly. The certificates were created outside Belante Holdings, she said, then inserted into your system as legitimate approvals. Nico looked toward Marcus. Who had access? Marcus answered carefully. My office, information security, and yours. Audrey opened one final record. And one external banking administrator. The name appeared on the screen. Celeste Ashford. No one spoke. Audrey felt the shape of the conspiracy forming, but one piece still refused to fit. If Celeste had helped create the false approvals, she needed someone inside Belante Holdings to place them into the system. Someone with executive access. Someone Nico trusted. Nico turned to Audrey. "Continue the audit," Marcus said. "Nico, these are family accounts. They are evidence now." Marcus's expression changed for only a second, but Audrey saw it. Not fear, calculation. That evening, Audrey returned to the records alone. She found a hidden access log attached to the mirrored server and began copying it to an external drive. A warning flashed across her screen. Unauthorized access detected. Before she could finish, every file disappeared. The conference room doors opened behind her. Marcus entered with 4 security officers. "Miss Hale," he said quietly, "step away from the computer." Audrey rose slowly from her chair, keeping both hands visible. The external drive remained connected to the laptop, its transfer light dark. Whatever she had nearly copied was gone. Marcus stepped farther into the conference room. The security officers spread out behind him, not threatening her openly, but blocking every exit. "What is this?" Audrey asked. Marcus's expression carried the careful disappointment of a man pretending to regret what he had already decided. Security detected an unauthorized attempt to access protected financial systems. "I was authorized by Nico. Your authorization was suspended 20 minutes ago." Audrey looked toward the frozen screen. "By whom?" "By the Executive Security Committee." "You mean by you?" Marcus ignored the accusation. "Step away from the table." Audrey removed the external drive and placed it beside the keyboard. The files were deleted remotely. "The files you were attempting to steal?" "The files proving someone cloned Nico's signature." Marcus's eyes did not change, but the silence after her words lasted half a second too long. The officers escorted Audrey to the main boardroom. Every executive seat was occupied when she entered. Charles Ashford sat beside his daughter, both wearing the solemn expressions of people attending a tragedy that benefited them. Owen stood near the wall, pale and confused. Nico waited at the head of the table. He looked at Audrey only once. No warmth remained in his face. Marcus placed the external drive before him. "We recovered this from Miss Hale." Audrey remained standing. "It contains nothing." The transfer was interrupted. Marcus connected it to the presentation system. A list of files appeared across the screen. Audrey stared. The drive was not empty. It contained copied banking records, private Belante accounts, federal contact information, and a transfer authorization directing $2 million to an offshore company registered under her name. "That is not mine," she said. Celeste folded her hands. "The registration documents include your social security number. Then someone had access to my employment records." Charles Ashford turned toward Nico. "This woman entered your company under false pretenses, manufactured an accounting discrepancy, and used the investigation to access restricted accounts." Audrey looked at Nico. "You know that is not what happened." Marcus opened another report. "The original acquisition model was altered through a terminal assigned to Miss Hale's temporary office. My office did not exist when the formula was changed. The terminal was registered before your arrival. Then check the physical access logs." "We did." Marcus displayed a security record showing Audrey's badge entering the executive floor late at night 2 days before her official start date. Audrey's pulse struck hard against her throat. "I did not have a badge then." Celeste spoke softly. "You appear to have planned this very carefully." Audrey turned toward her. "And you appear remarkably prepared for evidence discovered less than an hour ago." Celeste's smile vanished. Nico finally spoke. "Did you access the protected accounts after I instructed you to wait?" The question cut deeper than the accusations around it. Audrey faced him. "Yes." Several executives shifted. "Why?" Nico asked. "Because the mirrored server led back to Ashford Bank, and every North Star transfer passed through Marcus's authorization sequence." Marcus stood abruptly. "That is enough." "No," Audrey said. "It is exactly what you do not want him to hear." Nico's gaze remained fixed on her. "Can you prove it?" "The proof was in the deleted files. So you cannot." Audrey heard the distance in his voice. The same controlled distance used by men who had already decided which truth was safest. "You hired me because I would tell you what no one else would," she said. "I am telling you now. I did not steal from you. I did not contact federal agents. I did not create North Star." Marcus placed both hands on the table. "Her credentials are attached to every action. My credentials were inserted after the fact. Convenient. Not convenient. Deliberate." Charles Ashford looked toward Nico. "Federal investigators are already examining your company. If you protect her, they will assume you are involved. Celeste added. You must turn her over immediately. Nico's expression did not change. Everyone out. Marcus hesitated. Nico. Now. The room emptied slowly. Owen gave Audrey a helpless look before following the others. When the doors closed, the silence between Audrey and Nico felt nothing like the quiet dinners or private arguments they had shared. Nico walked toward the screen. Why did you disobey me? Because I believed someone inside your family was stealing from you. You believed Marcus was responsible. He still do. He raised me after my father died. That does not make him innocent. It makes your accusation serious. So are the numbers. The numbers currently say you betrayed me. Audrey flinched, despite herself. No. The numbers say someone wants you to believe I betrayed you. What is the difference if you cannot prove it? She stared at him. I thought you understood that by now. Nico's jaw tightened. Understand what? That evidence can be manufactured. That authority can decide which facts survive. That a powerful man can call a woman dishonest because the truth she found became inconvenient. This is not your previous firm. It feels exactly like it. His eyes darkened. You broke my order. I broke your order because your secrecy was protecting the person framing you. You accessed information that could start a war. And you trusted me only while my answers made your empire stronger. That is not true. Then what am I to you, Nico? Her voice softened, making the question more painful. A person? Or a useful woman who corrects your mistakes? He opened his mouth, but no answer came quickly enough. Audrey nodded once. The silence answered for him. You never trusted me, she said. You trusted my results. Nico pressed the intercom. Send security back in. Audrey's face went still. When the officers entered, Nico did not look away from her. Take Miss Hale to the Belante residence, he ordered. No police, no outside contact. No one approaches her without my permission. Audrey heard only the command to take her away. She walked past him without pleading, without defending herself again, and without looking back. Marcus returned after the doors closed. You made the right decision, he said. Every piece of evidence points to her. Nico turned toward him with a gaze as cold as winter steel. Yes, he said. Every number says Audrey Hale betrayed me. Marcus relaxed. Then Nico continued. But she has never lied to me. Marcus's expression froze. Nico picked up the phone and called Owen Price. Recover the deleted logs, he ordered. And tell no one you are working for me. The Belante residence was not a prison, but Audrey understood immediately that it had been designed by people who expected enemies. The stone house stood behind iron gates on a wooded estate outside the city. Security cameras followed every road. Armed guards occupied the entrance. The guest suite contained fresh clothing, a private bathroom, and windows that opened only 3 inches. Audrey had been there for 6 hours when Nico arrived. She was standing beside the fireplace with her arms folded, still wearing the green dress from the gala beneath a borrowed coat. She had refused dinner, refused to sleep, and refused every attempt by the housekeeper to make her comfortable. Nico entered alone. Audrey looked at him without warmth. Have you decided whether I am a criminal or merely an inconvenient employee? I decided before you left the boardroom. Then why am I here? To keep you alive. You could have explained that before ordering men to take me away. Marcus was watching. So you humiliated me for strategic effect. I made him believe I had chosen him. You also made me believe it. Nico stopped several feet away. For once, he did not defend himself immediately. You are right. The admission disarmed her more than an argument would have. Audrey narrowed her eyes. That was too easy. I handled it badly. You handled it like a man accustomed to moving people without telling them why. Yes. You do not get credit for agreeing with the accusation. No. His voice remained quiet. But you deserve the apology. Audrey turned toward the fire. Anger was easier to manage when he behaved like the controlling man she expected. It became far more dangerous when he admitted fault. You still confined me. I protected you from Marcus, Ashford Bank, federal investigators, and anyone else who believed you had copied those files. You protected me by taking away my choices. Nico accepted the words without flinching. I will not do it again. She looked back at him. You cannot promise that. Control is how you solve everything. It was. The past tense caught her attention. Nico removed a small black drive from his coat and placed it on the table between them. Then he added a key card, a handwritten password, and a thick folder marked with the Belante family seal. What is this? Access to every account you asked to see. Audrey did not move. Corporate, private, and family, he continued. The shipping operations, the security companies, the cash businesses. Every protected payment Marcus believed you would never reach. You said those records could start a war. They can. And you are giving them to me? Yes. Why? Because I asked you to trust me, while continuing to hide the truth. His expression tightened. That is not trust. It is obedience. The room became very still. Audrey opened the folder. The first pages contained organizational charts linking Betrayal holdings to private clubs, security firms, offshore companies, and businesses that did not appear in any public report. There was enough evidence inside to destroy Nico, his family, and everyone who had protected them. You understand what I could do with this? I do. I could give it to federal investigators. Yes. I could end your empire. Nico held her gaze. Losing the empire would hurt less than discovering I became another man who punished you for telling the truth. Audrey closed the folder slowly. She wanted to remain angry. She wanted the world to return to the simpler shape it had possessed before Nico Betrayal became someone capable of placing his life in her hands. Why did you believe me? She asked. Because the evidence was perfect. That is not an answer. It was too perfect. No hesitation, no mistakes, no conflicting records. Real theft is messy. Your supposed betrayal looked designed for an audience. That is still an analysis. Nico stepped closer. Then, because you have corrected me in rooms where agreeing would have made your life easier. You challenged people who could damage your career. You refused praise you had earned. You stayed after receiving threats because the truth mattered more than your safety. His voice softened. And because Audrey Hale has never lied to me. She looked away. Nico continued. I began visiting accounting because I wanted your opinion. Then I kept going because it was the only floor in my company where no one watched my face before deciding what to say. Audrey's throat tightened. You made excuses about printer placement. They were poor excuses. Very poor. I was distracted. By financial efficiency? By you. The honesty in his voice left nowhere safe to hide. Audrey set the folder aside. I thought you valued what I could do for you. I do. That is not enough. I know. She searched his face for calculation and found none. Nico said, You do not make my empire stronger because you are useful. You make it stronger because you force me to be honest enough to deserve it. Audrey's anger weakened beneath something more frightening. Hope. I do not know how to trust men with power, she admitted. I do not know how to ask someone to stay without turning it into an order. That sounds like a serious problem. It is. She almost smiled. Nico took one final step forward, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not so close that she could not leave. May I kiss you? The question mattered more than the kiss itself. Audrey nodded. Nico touched her face carefully, as though tenderness required more courage than violence ever had. When his mouth met hers, the kiss was slow, restrained, and filled with everything they had refused to say. Audrey gripped the front of his shirt, not because she needed support, but because she had finally chosen not to step away. When they separated, Nico rested his forehead lightly against hers. Owen called 3 minutes later. The deleted logs were unrecoverable, but he had found one impossible transaction. A North Star payment had been processed during a scheduled shutdown when Belante's authorization system was completely offline. Audrey returned to the table and opened Nico's protected files. The transaction did not come through your network, she said. It came through the mirrored server at Ashford Bank. Nico stood beside her. Can you prove it? Not if Marcus knows we are looking. Then what do you need? Audrey studied the payment patterns, then looked up. We make him believe you no longer trust me. We announce that Betrayal Holdings is moving every account out of Ashford Bank. Marcus will have to transfer the hidden money before the accounts close. He will expose himself. If he believes I am gone. Nico's eyes held a trace of dark amusement. Can you pretend to hate me? Audrey opened the first restricted account. That may be the easiest part of the plan. The final acquisition signing began at 10 the next morning, inside Betrayal Holdings' largest conference hall. Lawyers lined one side of the room. Ashford Bank representatives occupied the other. Meridian Freight's board sat beneath a screen, displaying the final $900 million agreement. Nico stood at the center table, calm and unreadable. Marcus sat 2 seats away. Celeste watched from beside her father. Audrey entered after the contracts had been placed in front of Nico. Every conversation stopped. Marcus rose first. She should not be here. Celeste's expression sharpened. Miss Hale is under investigation. Audrey carried no folder, only a slim black drive. Nico looked at her with deliberate coldness. You were told to stay away. I was told many things. Charles Ashford turned toward the legal team. Remove her before this becomes another liability. Audrey looked directly at Nico. You're wrong. The words struck the room exactly as they had on her first day. Nico's Haza held hairs. Then he leaned back from the unsigned contract. Show me. Marcus's hand tightened against the table. Audrey connected the drive to the presentation system. The acquisition documents disappeared, replaced by a timeline of North Star Advisory's transactions. The missing $18 million was never a single theft, she said. It was divided across 12 payments, routed through 3 Belante subsidiaries, and cleared through Ashford National Bank. Celeste stood. That accusation is absurd. Audrey clicked again. Each payment contains Nico's digital authorization, but one was processed during a scheduled shutdown when Belante's approval network was offline. A system maintenance report appeared beside the transaction. The signature could not have originated here. It was created through a mirrored server at Ashford Bank and inserted afterward. Charles Ashford's face lost color. Marcus remained still. A technical inconsistency proves nothing. It proves the records were fabricated. Audrey displayed the restored access path Owen had recovered from an archived backup. It also proves the mirrored server was accessed using an administrative account assigned to Celeste Ashford. Celeste turned toward Marcus. You said those records were destroyed. The room went silent. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Audrey continued. The bank created the false approvals. Someone inside Belante Holdings placed them into the system. Every transfer passed through one executive authorization sequence, exactly 23 minutes later. Marcus rose slowly. Be careful. His operating code appeared across the screen. Audrey faced him. You built a private security force with Belante money. You framed Nico as the thief, then used my credentials to create a second suspect. Marcus looked toward Nico. She is manipulating you. No, Nico said. She is correcting me. Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. You were stronger before her. I was blind before her. The conference doors opened. Men in dark jackets entered from the rear corridor. Several reached beneath their coats. Nico's security team moved first. Within seconds, the armed men were surrounded and disarmed. No shots were fired. Marcus stared at them, then at Audrey. She held his gaze. Your payroll transfers identified every man before they entered the building. Nico stepped toward his cousin. You financed your army through accounts you believed no one would question. Marcus's expression hardened. I protected this family from what you were turning it into. You protected yourself. Security officers restrained him. Celeste moved toward the exit, but federal agents entered through the main doors with warrants for Ashford Bank records. Charles Ashford sank into his chair. When the room finally cleared, the Meridian board requested a private vote. Nico stepped outside because of his relationship with Audrey. 20 minutes later, the board called them back. The chairman stood. By unanimous decision, Audrey Hale is appointed Chief Financial Officer of Belante Holdings, effective immediately. Audrey looked at Nico. He did not appear surprised. You knew, she said. I hoped. For once, you were right. Nico smiled. Audrey took the seat beside him. The acquisition contract remained unsigned between them. She opened it, turned to the final page, and pointed to a labor cost assumption. You are still wrong about this number. Nico looked down, then back at her. Then help me get it right. 6 months later, Belante Holdings completed the Meridian acquisition without losing a single employee or surrendering control of its shipping network. Audrey rebuilt the company's financial oversight from the ground up. No executive could approve major transfers alone. Every protected account required independent review. Owen Price became Director of Internal Audit and took great pleasure in reminding department heads that incomplete reports now reached the Chief Financial Officer directly. Nico did not interfere with Audrey's authority. That surprised everyone except Audrey. Their relationship became public quietly. There was no announcement, no staged photograph, and no attempt to soften the fact that they disagreed in nearly every important meeting. Audrey kept her own office. Nico continued occupying the top floor. He still visited accounting more often than necessary, though he had stopped pretending to care about printer placement. The coffee pool survived. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Nico presented a new expansion plan to the executive board. Audrey sat beside him, reviewing the final projections while he explained the proposed distribution network. The plan was disciplined, realistic, and almost entirely correct. Almost. Audrey turned to the final page. You're wrong. The room fell silent out of habit. Nico stopped speaking and looked at her. Months earlier, those words had challenged everything he believed about power. Now they carried no threat, only trust. The labor costs are based on last year's rates, Audrey said. The new union agreement increases them by 7%. Nico reviewed the calculation. Then he closed the folder. Then help me get it right. A few executives smiled. Owen quietly checked the time. Audrey stood and walked toward the screen. As she passed Nico, his hand found hers beneath the edge of the table. He held it for only a moment, but the gesture said what neither of them needed to announce. Nico had once believed strength meant never losing. Audrey had once believed numbers were safer than people. Together, they learned that trust was not certainty. It was the choice to remain when certainty disappeared. Audrey corrected the projection. Nico approved the change. And inside an empire once protected by fear, the truth finally had a permanent seat at the table.